Welcome to our latest Book Reporter Talks To interview, where our guest today is Diane Chamberlain, the author of Big Lies in a Small Town, which was a recent Book Reporter Bestselling selection and a book I absolutely loved. And I have so many questions for her. I am so looking forward to this conversation. I listened to it on audio, and we're going to discuss that as well. It was a really terrific experience. So welcome, Diane. So great to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Carol. I love getting to do an interview with you.
Oh, we had so much fun at Morristown Festival of Books last year.
Didn't we? That was fabulous.
We had so much fun. So let's start by you telling us a bit about the kernel of the idea for Big Lies in a Small Town.
Well, I had no idea what I was going to write about, and I was starting to panic. And then I stumbled across an article about the old WPA murals that were in post offices and in courthouses, government buildings. And what was happening way back in the 30s and 40s, it was the end of the Depression, and FDR put in place these WPA programs to put people back to work. And he put back authors and painters and poets and all different kinds of fields in addition to laborers. So I came across this article about the WPA murals, and it reminded me of my hometown, which was Plainfield, New Jersey, where I grew up. And there were some big murals in the post office there that always fascinated me. So I started thinking about how I could use a mural in a story. And I came up with the idea of, I read about a contest, a competition. It was called the 48 state competition. And it was 48 states at the time in the United States. And each state, a small town in each state, was going to get a post office mural. And artists were competing to be able to get to paint that particular post office mural. And it was an anonymous contest. So that gave an even playing field to all the famous artists as well as amateurs. So I came up with an idea in 1940 of an amateur artist. Her name is Anna. And she sends in her idea for, she's in New Jersey. She sends in her idea for a mural for a New Jersey post office. And she wins, but somebody else has won the New Jersey post office opportunity. So they tell her that she can paint a mural in Edenton, North Carolina, which is this tiny little town in North Carolina, and she knows nothing about the South. So she has to go to Edenton to learn about it, and she's a true fish without water. And I knew that I wanted also to have a contemporary storyline. So I had to figure out, how am I going to tie a contemporary storyline into this 1940s story? And I came up with a character named Morgan, who is also 22. Both these women are 22, only she's 22 in 2018. And she is in prison for something she didn't do. And a woman comes to her and says that she can get her out of prison if she will agree to restore this old mural that has just been found. And I had left something out here. When Anna was working on the mural in 1940, she disappears, and so does the mural. So the mural has been unearthed, and Morgan agrees to restore it, although she knows nothing about restoration. And as she's restoring the mural, she begins to uncover clues to Anna's disappearance.
You know, it's such an interesting book because you've got the whole art and the history portion. There's this mystery that's underlying completely. And there's so much about these two women because we get to know, Anna's left Plainfield, where I knew you grew up, and it's close to where I live. In fact, I'm wondering if these murals still exist in the post office. I'm wondering.
I wonder too.
I will go down and check. I will go make that my mission to go down and check. So when she goes down there, we also have a northerner that's going down to a southern city or a town, small town, and they don't really love the fact a northerner is coming down now to be doing this painting.
Right. I mean, she's a Yankee. And first of all, she's a woman. And in those days, most of the the serious painters were men. Most of the muralists were men, but not all. So they're not happy about that. They're really not happy that she's from the North and doesn't know a thing about Edenton. Mm-hmm. And to make matters really bad, there is a painter in the town who's very, very well known in the town. His name is Martin Drapple. And he is very popular in the town. And he had applied. He had tried to be in this competition, and she won over him. So nobody in the town is happy about that. And she was raised, I don't know about you, but having been raised in Plainfield, New Jersey, what I learned about the South growing up was that it was really backward and that the people weren't very smart. And she's coming down with that kind of attitude. And so she never saw herself going south of the Mason-Dixon line. So she has a lot to learn as she's trying to fit into this new environment.
Yes, I remember when she's wearing pants, and people can't understand why she's wearing pants. And also the place where she's living, no guests in the evening, you can't be out at night, where were you? And it's all these social mores that she's not completely used to as well.
Right. And even, the whole pants thing, being an artist, and especially a muralist, she's got to climb up ladders and do all kinds of things. And she does hire a couple of teenagers from the town to help her. And one is a girl, and the girl refuses to wear pants. And so she can't really help. And then she does hire a young black boy from the colored high school to help out. And then the girl has a fit, and the girl's father has a fit. And so the girl can't work there anymore. So she butts heads with a lot of people.
She butts heads with a lot of people. And I also like the way the young black boy, his teacher came over and advocated for him and said, he's flunking every class, but he's really talented as an artist. So I really want you to be able to do something with him. And I thought that was, it was such a forward move at that time as well, to be putting the student in the situation as well. So the setting in Edenton, is that close to where you live in North Carolina? I know.
No, it's about 3 hours away. And it's a charming little town.
Well, now you had found this town through a reader. I think I heard this someplace, and you went out trying to figure out how to set a story there, couldn't figure it out, and then this came to you.
Exactly. Yeah. Years ago, maybe 8 years now, 6 years, a woman came up to me at one of my signings, and she was from Edenton, and she said, "You really have to come to Edenton. I know you'll find a story there." So she persuaded me, and so my partner John and I went to Edenton, and she and her husband wined and dined us and treated us so nicely, and we stayed in this wonderful Inner Banks Inn, and we took the trolley all around Edenton, which is a historical tour, and we visited the house where the woman who set up the Edenton Tea Party during the Revolution, where she lived, and we did all this stuff, and I had nothing, just nothing. And I said to
the gonna work.
I felt bad, but I said to the woman, it's such a charming town. I absolutely love it. There's so much history. It's so interesting, but I just don't have an idea right now. So when I came up with this idea of that most of the towns that were selected for the post office murals were small towns getting their first post office. So I thought this Edenton would be absolutely perfect for it. And I made sure that Edenton didn't have a mural in the post office so that I was free to do whatever I wanted. And sure enough, it didn't. So that's how it came to be set in Edenton. And it is, if you ever get a chance to go, it's a charming place.
Charming town. So what did you have to learn about creating a mural? I mean, I know you're a brilliant writer. Do you have art talent as well?
Not at all.
Not at all.
No, even in Pictionary, no, I can think I need to draw a dog, but it doesn't look anything like a dog. So no, but there's a lot of books that I found, a lot of old books about the murals and about the artists that painted them. And I think I read them all. I knew how to do it by the time I was done, even if I could never do it. So I studied. I did a lot of research into how to create this mural, and I learned that what is done is first you had to create I think it's a 32 by 18 inch color reproduction of what it is you're going to be painting on the wall. And you don't actually paint it on the wall, by the way, you paint it on a canvas.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how they applied for this contest, was this smaller painting. And then they created a cartoon, which I had no idea. It took me forever to figure out what a cartoon is, but it's a big, the size of the mural, black and white sketch
Wow.
of the actual mural. And then what is done is, and you had to take pictures of that and turn it into the people who were making decisions about the contest. And that was the next step that she had to do. And then after that, you remember those, if you ever sewed, those little wheels that you ran along the pattern.
Yeah.
So you did that over the sketch, over the cartoon, and you tacked it up on the canvas, and then you pounced on it with charcoal, so that by the time you took it down, you have the whole outline of the mural, and then you can start painting it. So it was a very complicated process that I had to learn. And then I had to study restoration, because I really knew nothing about restoration. And there's a wonderful woman in the next town over from me who has a restoration company, and she's also very interested in writing. So we had a great day together with her, showing me all the tools of her trade and explaining to me exactly what Morgan would have to do to create this, to restore this image. And I was thrilled to learn that really, to begin, all she had to do was clean it off with a cotton wrapped dowel, because that I could picture. I was afraid I was going to get into chemicals and all kinds of stuff that I would be in way over my head. But for her to slowly, inch by inch, clean this mural off and gradually discover clues as she did it, it was really kind of fun. Yep. Fun to write.
At any point, did you actually sketch like where the Tea Party ladies were and where, so you actually had a little drawing?
Yeah, I did. And I've wondered so much about what my readers are seeing. My sister was my early reader, and she said she could just see it perfectly. And I'm thinking, does she see what I see? And I've thought about having a contest of having people draw, sketch, paint what it is that they're seeing. I think that would be, for me, that would be really fun to see what people actually see when they.
I think it'd be fun. You know, it might be something fun to do, like when the paperback's coming out, like to have the contest.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah, and then you do your reveal of what you did, like the way that you actually had your sketch.
But remember, I can't draw anything.
That's okay. Whatever you were working with, your little, because I think I just found myself thinking the whole time, like, how do the Tea Party ladies look? I saw them being a little rotund, and I saw them like their stockings and their shoes and things like that. It was just really so interesting to see what you did. So you visualized it, but you had a lot to learn. You had a lot to learn as you were going along the way. You know, there's so much tension in the book. Everything from Anna winning the competition to Morgan coming to town. What draws you to writing tension like that into your books?
Well, I'm a believer that if every book, no matter what kind of book it is, has to have suspense in it. And even if it's, a memoir, I think there's got to be some real compelling reason for the reader to turn the page. So I try to end my chapters, my scenes, on a note of tension, so that the reader, I'll just stay up one more minute and read this next few pages, and they just have to keep going. That's what I love in a book, and that's what I try to create when I'm writing. So I'm glad that you felt that there was a lot of tension, because that's really important to me.
There's so many mysteries. There's what happened to Anna Dale, the clues that are hidden in the decrepit mural. What is Morgan selecting to, like, why was she selected to restore the painting? Did you see all these from the start, or were you layering in what your different, like, tensions were going to be?
Right. I outline. And so I had this big outline, and I don't know why I bother, because as soon as the characters start doing their thing, I might as well just throw my outline away. I always say the characters never saw the outline. And so, I knew sort of the basics. I knew what Anna's background was, and that she had a mentally ill mother. I didn't really know very much more than that. I did know when she walked into the warehouse, which is where the place that they give her to paint the mural, and she's really fearful of the ceiling. And I'm going to myself, why is she afraid of the ceiling? And then it came to me, which I won't tell you. But these things, to me, it's the characters that start revealing things to me.
Now, did you write one whole time period first and then the second, or were you weaving them? Because it seems like it'll be so hard to go back and forth with these two.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did do one at a time. I knew the story, but I did write them one at a time. And I wrote Anna's first. I did her complete story. And then I did Morgan's complete story. And I was terrified that they would not fit together. Because they're so dramatically different. They're just completely different stories. And as I started weaving them in and out, just alternating, it was miraculous how well they fit together. There were only a couple of places where I really had to tweak. I think my favorite place early in the book is when Anna first gets to Edenton, and she sees what the stores are, and she sees the movie theater. And then in the very next chapter, Morgan is arriving in Edenton for the first time, and she sees the stores only 40, 70 years later, 80 years later, however many it was, and the movie theater. And the movie theater at that time, in Morgan's time, is shuttered and being renovated. And in Anna's time, it's showing movies. So it was really kind of amazing to me how everything just clicked. It was pretty lucky.
I just love the way that you could just picture the juxtaposition of pulling into the town and just picturing what it was like, because you're told about it and then you're seeing the whole thing now. A reviewer noted that this book was reminiscent of a quilt made up of pieces from different people, places, and times stitched together into a single emotional story. And I thought that just summed the story up completely of what ended up happening. So when you were gathering these different pieces to write about, when you wrote the first story, when you wrote Anna's, were you writing notes of what could happen with Morgan later?
Yeah. I mean, as I mentioned, I outlined, so I knew what Morgan's story was. But of course, I ended up tweaking it. And I had several different endings. And I played with each one and talked with my editor about each one, trying to figure out what was best. And fortunately, I have a fantastic editor at St. Martin's. And she really, she told me what she thought would work best. And ultimately, I think she's absolutely right. I know that there are people that wish that I had ended it more, that I hadn't ended it, that I had just kept going, or that I would write a sequel.
The conclusion's amazing.
Right. It's what I love, happy endings, and I do think it has a happy ending, but people just wanted more.
Yeah, and I sort of
your imagination.
It could go to a sequel. I could see a sequel because I'd love to know what happens next in her life. So weaving the timelines together had some challenges. You weigh the clues so carefully when a reader looks back. Like when they're sitting looking back, it's like, saw that earlier, but I missed it. Like I wasn't quite paying attention. It was like these little Easter eggs that were so cleverly done. Were you seeing those at the time and saying, gotcha?
You know, I
Because it
went
just
back
makes
and
such a
forth.
difference.
Like for example, I don't think I'm giving much away when I say that when the canvas is first unrolled and Morgan sees it and the other guys who are working in the studios see it, in between these 1700s women at the tea party is coming out of their skirts is an Indian motorcycle,
Right,
which of course would not have been around in the 1700s.
right.
So that is the first dramatic clue. And I knew, I knew that motorcycle was going to be there, and I knew it was going to be an Indian, and I had it very clear in my mind, but I didn't know until much, much, much later where it came from and why Anna put it there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's that kind of thing where I could put things in the images and later on figure out how they tied together.
Yeah, and also we've got Jesse's will that's specifying that Morgan has to do the restoration, and his daughter cannot figure out why. Like no one can figure out why, and that mystery stays right to the end. We're not going to give away, what was going on. Did you know the answer to that one right up front, that you wanted to have that kind of a clue, or that came later?
It came later. I figured it out with the reader. I knew that there was something happening. Excuse my dog.
Now, what's the dog's name? We have to have the dog's name.
His name is Cole. Excuse me.
Oh, there he is. He's Cole.
I am not sick.
Well, the other thing that I confess, and I confess this to you in an email, that Jesse Jameson Miller, I did not connect from the first story to the second story. And I was listening to this on audio. And I remember driving down the New Jersey Turnpike and saying, wait a second, it's the same guy that was the high school student. How did I not put this together? And I'm driving and I'm like, was that a reveal or was I just dumb? And I couldn't figure out if maybe it was because I was listening on audio, but I heard Jesse and all of a sudden the Jessies clicked together. And I can't figure out if it was me or if it's just because I was listening differently.
To me, it's very obvious because we know that Jesse Jameson Williams has his will, and it's his daughter who gets Morgan out of jail. We know all of that. We know that this whole gallery where the canvas is going to go is his gallery. He's dead at this point, but we know that this is his dream. So we know all about him. And then the young 17-year-old Jesse, when Anna talks to his teacher about him coming to help her, she says, what is his name? And the teacher says, Jesse Williams. Well, to me, it is so staggeringly obvious that this is the same person. And what I have noticed is it's people who listen to it don't connect it, but people who read it.
But the readers do. People who are reading it do. I was just trying to figure this out.
Name.
Yeah. It's just this. The audio, Susan Bennett is a great narrator.
Oh my gosh, isn't she fantastic?
Fabulous. Both voices were different enough that I could hear them. Did you have a hand in selecting her to narrate?
I did. They asked me for the first time. They asked me who I wanted, and she had done The Dream Daughter, my last book, and a couple others of my books, and I just love her. And so she was available, and we snatched her up. And the book won. I can't remember the exact title of the audiobook award that it won, but I'm just so pleased that she did it. I did listen to the book, and it's like watching a play. She's so amazing.
Yeah, she really is. She absolutely brought both of the characters to life for me. But I could definitely hear differences. Like when sometimes you're listening, especially when there are two time periods. And I've heard this from book groups. It's very difficult because you don't really hear the differentiation between the two and you don't know where you are. With her, I felt like I always knew where I was in the story. And I think that's incredibly important.
That's a real testament to her talent.
Yeah. So, okay. So you've written more than 25 novels. Is the process on this one, was it different?
I think the only thing that was really different, I'm laughing because the process is always horrible. I mean, I can't sugarcoat this. I go through absolute torture. I think I'm writing the worst piece of garbage that ever was created, pretty much up until the end. And then I usually go, this is not so bad. And especially once I get feedback from my editor that it's good, then I feel fine. But up until that time, I'm loaded with self-doubt. So the thing that was different is I didn't have a clear idea of what I wanted to write about. And that was very scary, because if you have a year, you're contracted, your contract reads you have a year and you have no idea.
Right.
And so it wasn't until I stumbled over the article about the WPA murals that suddenly the idea came to me. So that was kind of terrifying. Previous books, I usually have an idea before I
So the question for you now is, so for the next book, where are you in the process? Are you in the murk, or are you in the
I'm definitely in the murk.
the murk?
I am so in the murk. I just got back I went to the beach it was going to be 2 weeks. And I realized this is the first time I've been completely alone, without John, without Cole. And I have neighbors. It's a condominium, so I have neighbors, but we couldn't see each other because we're isolated. So I was being completely alone. And I was doing great in the beginning. And then by about day 8, John sent me a picture of Cole. That did it.
That's it. You're in the car.
Home to my boys. So, but I was working there, and it still feels like murk. I think it's going to feel pretty bad for another couple of months. And then I think the story is going to start really gelling for me, which is good because it's due in July.
It's due in July, and it's coming out. When does it come out? Next January will it come out?
Probably. I don't know that it's in the schedule yet. I don't know for sure if they figured that out. And I don't know what this time period that we're going through, I don't know how it's going to affect publishing. Right. If it is or not.
Well, we've seen books moving. I've got books moving already. I mean, every day I'm getting different things that they're moving from either May to the fall, or they're moving, some of them are moving to next year. So I'm getting notes like all the time on what's going on. And it was interesting because this fall, a lot of people weren't going to publish because of the election. So as a result, there are spots for the fall that are open because the schedule was so reduced. So I think we're going to see some traction because of that. But I will say that people are continuing to read. And that I think is, that we're seeing a lot. Our sites are getting a amount of traffic.
Well, what else is there to do?
I want to thank you for joining us today. I absolutely love the book, was dying to talk to you about it. And since we couldn't do that out in Tucson, I'm so glad we had this opportunity.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Carol. It's a pleasure.
I look forward to seeing you again soon, someplace. We'll figure it out. Okay. And to our readers, we'll be back with another interview next couple of days. Thanks so much for joining us, everyone. And thanks again, Diane.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now.